Square Enix, you are the herald of bad news, aren't you? Rather recently, you announced that Final Fantasy Tactics would finally be getting a sequel, more or less, as a MOBA social title, which is its actual title is called Final Fantasy Tactics S, the S likely standing for social. And your main task is for you to lead people around and basically restore the crystal's luster, which I think means shine or light. But the fact of the matter is, it's another social game, and quite frankly, some people are disheartened or unhappy about it because it's like you can only make mobile titles anymore, and you're basically going off of name recognition, making it seem redundant, like you can't make anything. And to be honest, even if it makes something accessible or something like that, it really pisses me off. It's just telling me that you can't do anything anymore. You're just relying on old franchises you think are mainstream and will sell a lot. You give well-known names a lot of marketing they don't need, like Tomb Raider, and then you have these new IPs like Bravely Default, and you don't market them at all. And it's like you either want them to fail, or you're like, if they do great with no marketing, then it must be a really good product. And I'm like, why do you do this? And you're not telling anyone why. You're just making excuses all the time. Even at a past PS4 reveal conference, you had a guy come in to say, hey, be excited, we might bring something out sometime. We'll talk about it like at E3. Wait for it. Please be excited. And that must be really embarrassing for that guy to do. Just to fly in to say, hey, we have something in development, but we're not going to tell you what it is. And then they say they have a new Final Fantasy title coming out. And I'm getting sick and tired of Final Fantasy in general. It's like the only thing they think people will go for, and I'll be honest, I think in the recent Nintendo Direct where they announced that Bravely Default would at least be coming overseas eventually at the end of the year in Europe and early 2014 for North American territories, I was super excited, and I'm pretty sure people were also super excited about that too. But it just goes to show that Square Enix themselves don't have any faith or are even competent enough to make the announcement themselves. Nintendo had to step in and say, hey, this is coming. But did Square Enix? No, they didn't say a word because apparently they can't talk. Or if they can, they only have a limited amount of words that they can actually use. They can announce iOS games and have a bunch of countdown sites for that, but if it's any big announcement, no. Mm-mm. We can't have that. That would make too much sense. Don't get the people excited. Just lead them along like a blind horse smelling that carrot in front of his nose. Don't have your eyes open to what we're doing. Keep them in the dark. That's annoying, irritating, and I'm getting tired of it. And it's just stupid. And if you look at it, you can see that they've just been systematically killing off their franchises. You have Front Mission. They tried to revive it with this spin-off game called Front Mission Evolved. Well, it was more like Front Mission Devolved because a lot of people hated it. It tanked, and it didn't tank in a good way. It tanked in a bad way. And the thing is, the storyline was just cliche anime garbage. And then later on, they kill off another franchise, essentially. They make a spin-off to the acclaimed series Parasite Eve, and they basically... The game itself, I'll admit, was a great game. But the story, it was terrible. You had to play it multiple times to even get a sense of what was even going on. But then you still barely get it, and you're just wondering why the story even took place. It jumps around a lot and you don't know what you're doing or why you're doing it. And it's just bad. And then another thing that I get so angry about is their need for Final Fantasy 13 and its sequels that were never planned from the get-go, and it just seemed like a last-minute ordeal. And I don't understand it. It's like, well, it sold this much. I'm like, well, the initial game sold that much because you overhyped it, and people expected something great out of it, and what you gave them wasn't what you were trying to show, that you showed them back in 2006. And that made a lot of people angry. And it's like, why am I playing this game? This is terrible. And even if you think, well, I don't think it was terrible. I think it was innovative and fun, and you should like it. Well, some people don't. And that's the way it is. And the fan base is even more divisive because of it. If it wasn't divided in half already, they divided those halves into halves, basically, with sequels nobody wanted. And then over in Japan, you have Final Fantasy Type 0, which some people have played, and they say that is a fantastic game. This is what Final Fantasy should be. Or at least this is a step in the right direction. This is something I'd like to play. But no, they keep it in Japan because they went with the design flaw that it should be on PlayStation Portable, which is understandable. But they expected PlayStation Vita to pick up, but it did not. So their plans for it had to go down the drain, and now they have to wait for a new opportunity to get it out to us. But that's just basically saying it's not happening. We're sitting on a localized script, but we can't do anything with it. So sucks to be you. And then with Versus, because everyone likes Versus and they want to see information come out for it. That's all they want is information, but we can't have that because apparently, as Nomura likes to call it, the game's developer and producer, there's been an information ban on it. I don't know why there'd be an information ban on a game unless there's something they do not want you to know. And what I suspect is that since it's been through development hell, more or less, it's just, I think it's going to be for PS3 and PS4, and it's probably going to go down the path of Twilight Princess, GameCube, and Wii. There's nothing wrong with that, but people have to know these things. And if they say something like that at E3, then fine, people know things. But over the course of time, they've just said, we're not going to tell you anything about it. And then when people got worried it was canceled, they said it wasn't canceled. And they're still stringing them along, and all they mention, well, the buildings are quite nice. You will be blown away, blah blah blah, and it's just nothing. But they don't even give you a screenshot or a teaser video or anything. I swear, if it just gets rebranded as Final Fantasy 15, that will just be hilarious to me. Because if they just show a CG trailer, that's not gonna tell me anything. That's gonna say, well, maybe you did cancel it, and maybe you just turned it into something else to save your own ass. But I don't really get it. It's annoying. And another thing that I really hate, besides killing off your franchises, and trust me, Final Fantasy isn't doing well with its, household name and whatever. Because I think redoing 14 might be a great idea, but for me, it's an MMO, and sure, you'll have a certain amount of subscribers and you'll get your money pump you want, but I don't know why you couldn't expand or renovate Final Fantasy 11 and go about it that way. But I guess you're just too greedy to even know what common sense is, but whatever. For me, it looks nice, and Gilgamesh is gonna be in it, but that's about it. It looks great, and it sounds great, but for me, since it's an MMO, it's not going to be great because I probably won't play it, and I'll have to miss out on that, and that's how it is. And I have no interest in the PS3 either, so there's no point in bringing that argument to me. I don't really care. It doesn't have that many titles I would bother with, so it's not worth a purchase. So that's all I have to say about that. But the annoying thing is that they have so many franchises that they've either destroyed or abandoned or redundantly, I know, left behind. The Mana series, that's no longer viable. There was a social game, but like I said, they're having all these names that you recognize and they're just putting them on social and mobile platforms, and it's great for the people that have them, but I don't care about them. So they're not for me. And it just irritates me. So I'm like, why do you do this? And another thing, it's like people were, expecting the usual. Final Fantasy V and Final Fantasy VI are going to get a remake and all that. But what they decided to do with Final Fantasy V is make it an iOS remake using their Final Fantasy Dimensions engine, and I wouldn't really have a big problem with this because, like people will like to say, it makes it more accessible, and that's completely fine. But my problem was the conflicting art styles. You see the enemy sprites, they look great, but then you have the Dimensions art style battle character sprites, and it's like that clashes so much, and I don't know why you would do that. Then another thing, you see the Amano portraits, which I will say look great, but they come out of the dialogue box. They aren't properly sized, and it just looks bad, and like someone just opened up RPG Maker and just took some random portrait and didn't bother to make it look nice. And like, you know what? Here you go. That here, I'm done. This is all you get. I'm just gonna drop a portrait in there, and I'm gonna have my weird ass font, and I'm gonna call it a day. And that's pretty much what they did. And now I'm hearing some patches are screwing with the game too. So yeah, that's fun. Yeah. But I just don't understand why they would. And you know what? If Final Fantasy V is getting that treatment and they have their whole mobile revolution thing going on, you know what? Final Fantasy VI is going to get the same treatment. And I know people like, well, I would like that game to get a full-fledged remake, blah, 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 blah. Well, you're going to have to deal with it because you can't stop the darkness that is to come. And that's all I have to say on with that. But yeah, they've abandoned many things and turned them into crap some people will deal with and crap some people won't deal with. And I just hate that. And we aren't getting any more games in the Chrono series, and like forever, we'll get like a couple ports and we'll get the occasional PR spokesman guy to say, well, if you really want a sequel, you need to give us more money so we can do stuff with that money, but we will not give you a remake that we said we were going to do by you giving us that money. And that's pretty much how it goes. It's pretty much give us money so we can do nothing with it. And that's pretty much the gist of it with the Chrono series, and a bunch of their other stuff they just do nothing with, like the Musashi games. They don't do anything with that anymore. It's like they took all their old ideas, and since they don't consider it mainstream, and it won't sell that much, they do nothing with it. But the thing is, if you want to make something mainstream, you have to do something with the intellectual property. If you don't do anything with it, it's not going to be mainstream. But you wouldn't know that, would you? No, you wouldn't. You don't have common sense. But that's what I think. What I think doesn't matter, so whatever. If Final Fantasy crashes and dies, I'll have to get all sad knowing that my favorite character in the entire series never got his own spin-off game, which he rightfully deserves. I'm talking about Gilgamesh, of course. And I'm going to say it like that all the time, so you may as well get used to it. But yeah. And when they talked about and basically gave "this is the reason we suck" speech, they blamed it on their Western studios who brought them fantastic games that were million sellers. Tomb Raider sold 3.4 million or more in a month, and other games like Hitman Absolution and Sleeping Dogs did well for what they were, but they were below expectations of like 3 million and 6 million respectively for each title. And it's like, you expected that much? That's just asinine. That's just like, well, we want it to sell this much, so we think we should get it because we're Square Enix, and yeah. It doesn't work like that. And I just think that say, well, this game's a failure because it didn't sell this much is just dumb. It's like incredibly dumb. But what do I know, right? I didn't buy the games. So even though they're good, but I'm just not interested in them. And, that's how it is. I mean, if it was, yeah, but that's what I mean. They just think everything's a failure if it doesn't reach their expectations. And then with their games that are good, they're either on a vampire system in Japan, like Final Fantasy Type 0, and they want nothing to do with it, or they say they want to do something with it, but do nothing with it anyway. I think it would be a smart decision to just make it a 3DS game. Because, contrary to popular belief, the 3DS does do a lot better than the Vita does. So, I think it would be a smart decision to go that way, but I don't know. And then with Bravely Default, and then, Dragon Quest VII, it seems to me that they have no faith whatsoever in bringing it overseas, so you have to have one of the big companies like Nintendo step in and say, hey, we're bringing this over here. Period. And that's how it seems to has to go. And if this continues, it's going to become more of a pattern, and I think that Square Enix is honestly going to become a Japan-only developer and might only develop, eventually, handheld and maybe mobile-only games for a time. Because they say that their Western studios failed them so much, but the thing is, they're the only reason they're relevant right now. Their Japanese side has done nothing on the console output area. Nothing. All they got is Final Fantasy 13 and watch the lightning swing her sword around for 40 hours, pretty much. And that's pretty much all they want. They just want lightning saga everything. If it isn't that cliche anime bad, we don't want it. And it just goes to show you that with these with a more mature game, kinda like Type Zero, it's like they don't want to move forward with their series anymore. They just want to keep the same thing over and over and over and over again because most of their talent has left or is locked in the basement, and they don't want to improve or do anything with it anymore. And it's sad. It's like they don't want to make any games we like anymore, or make games at all, except only for the mobile market, which granted some people like, but I don't. So that's pretty much all I have to say on that. And I just don't understand them at all. It's irritating. I just don't get it. And I'm repeating myself because I can't comprehend what their thinking is. It's like, I want them to do well, but they just keep on announcing this stupid crap, and it's like, I don't know. But it is what it is. All I can say is that I was happy that Bravely Default was announced, and that maybe eventually I can get that game. And because nowadays it's like, if they don't decide to localize it, you either have to go out of your way to import a region lock system and buy that specific game to actually play it, or you're just stuck watching it online, and yeah, or just not doing anything with it at all. So it's really irritating, and I don't know what's going on with Square Enix. I personally think that they're dying, and that everyone should just find a new RPG company to get their RPG fix. And for me, that's Monolith Soft, because every title or team thing they've worked on is a fantastic title. At least what I've seen. I've liked all their titles, so. I haven't played all of them, but I've seen all of them, and I like them a lot, and I'm really excited for the titles that they have planned to make in the future. So, yeah, Square Enix, I don't know what's going on with you. And I've said that so many times, but I have to say it so many times because I see that you don't know what you're doing. You have no head, or if you have a head, you're missing both of your hands because you don't know what they're doing. And yeah, seriously, get with the program, fix what you need to fix, and just get rid of your terrible writers, and please don't make them the director of a game if they honestly don't know what the hell they're doing. Please, do something right. Stop making this a love-hate relationship. I love you as a RPG developer, but I'm hating you for all your asinine, stupid-ass decisions. Okay? Work with me here. If you make games I want and bring them over here, I can support you with money. I know you like that, but you're really sending the wrong message to me. So, hop to it. Thank you.